Hello everyone, welcome back to a new episode of the Harstem. Today we're going to be having a look at Zest's PvT after covering his PvZ last week. I figured might as well continue with Zest, right? He's been in amazing shape, and just have a look at some of his PvT games. And I found this series that he played against Special, who is obviously one of the better TERRANS in the world. And I thought it would be interesting to just have a quick look at it. Just go over exactly what he reacts, how he reacts to different openers, to different styles, and what his tendencies are in the matchup, and if there's anything that we as, mere mortals could perhaps copy and learn from someone like him. So just opens up with standard gateway expand, most likely core first is his general opener. Now we see that Special decided to proxy his first barracks, and I have 3 games prepared. One game is a proxy barracks, one game is a gas first, and one is a full wall with barracks depot. So we're gonna see responses to 3 very different openers, but we see him going into similar ideas after the opener and still basically going into what he wants to do anyway. So he scouts the lack of a barracks, and his response is to just get core, nexus, pylon, very standard, and then he uses the scouting probe to actually do something that not a lot of people do. So what he does is he patrols over here to check the timing at which the SCV returns back home, which is absolutely brilliant, because by the timing of this SCV returning home, he's like, okay, it returned home at 1:53. Usually a barracks finishes around 1:27, 1:28. That means he had about a 20-second walk. And based on the information of when the SCV came home, Cess now knows, okay, there is a barracks on my side of the map. That's all he wanted to know. I wouldn't mind if with this probe, he decides to go up here and check if there's a factory building or not. Just to confirm, okay, there's a factory there. But even if you see, if you see the SCV come back home, usually it does indicate there's a factory here, because imagine the SCV doesn't come home, it probably means there's a factory on the map. And that could trigger Zest to start scouting like a madman on the map with this probe, with perhaps a second probe, just trying to find the factory, maybe even a proxy starport afterwards. So really, he figures a lot out by the timing of the SCV returning home, and his responses there will be different on different things, basically. Like, imagine he's over here with his SCV, with his probe, and the SCV returns at like 1:30, then he knows the barracks is going to be over here. He's probably not going to change anything in his build order whatsoever then, because it's basically a barracks at home. So chronos out of Stalker, tries to micro his probes. It's a little bit difficult as he doesn't have a wall. So he's gonna probably end up losing 1 or 2 workers here to this Reaper. It's not that relevant. I mean, he holds. That's really the most important thing. Now, another thing that's important to note here is that the moment he sees a Reaper, he knows that it can't really be Proxy Marauder. So what he does as a result is he does not get a fast battery. I bet if he didn't see a Reaper, he'd probably get a battery about 210, 215 in-game. So these are small things which you don't really realize if you don't think about them. But when you watch a replay, always try to look at like, hey, why is this reaction happening? And what would have happened if it would have been Proxy Marauder? Because a lot of people, they'll look at an opening like this, like, well, whenever I just chrono boost a Stalker and skip a battery, I die to Proxy Marauder. That's true, but he sees a Reaper. So Proxy Marauder is basically impossible. If it's Proxy Marauder, it's going to hit a lot later. Now, he chrono boosts out 2 Stalkers, then gets a very fast second gateway, and he's going to line up that gateway with, as you can see, with the warp gate finishing. So a gateway takes 46 seconds. This warp gate, well, it will take still 46 seconds from now. So he even has the ability now to chrono boost warp gate once for faster warp ins. So what he's gonna do is he's gonna get 3 Stalkers, 1 chrono boost on warp gate, and then he can get 5 Stalkers in total after the first double gated warp in. Now, is there any risk involved here in this build order? If we just think about, so he gets very fast units very early on. What are the things he's lacking? Well, he's lacking detection, you could say, but what's the earliest time a Banshee really can hit, right? Like, what is that timing? Well, we see Starport is still building at this point, so a Banshee hitting might be at 420, 415, the fastest, if you immediately have a tech lab ready for the Starport. And I think most of the time that early is not even gonna have cloak, so he doesn't actually need the robo yet, and a single battery can do a lot against Banshees as well, especially if it's single Banshees initially. Now, Another thing that is not very common anymore, but could be, is the proxy ghost. But as he sees 2 Reapers, proxy ghost is basically excluded. So no need for a fast robotics facility. Now, as his warp gate is finishing up, he builds a pylon on the other side of the map. He is just moving across the map with Stalker, blah, 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 blah. And he's going to warp in 2 Stalkers here, obviously, right? He's going to get these 2 gateways. Then, once his warp gate finishes, he throws down a Twilight Council. So he's already thinking of the next step. So he's like, all right, I'm going to put on some minor pressure. Note, this is minor pressure. It's only 2 gates. He's not cutting worker production at any time. He's continuously beam building workers. Perhaps the Chrono Boost have been going somewhere else, but yes, the worker production has been very constant. So he warps in 2 Stalkers. Here comes a Cyclone. Is going to end up killing this probe, which is annoying. Because that probe would have probably been used to clear this mine. Now instead he needs to use a Stalker, which obviously isn't ideal. He's still going to try to push in, and just in case there's no bunker and the CC is on the low ground, maybe he can snipe a mule, maybe an SCV. He warps in a couple of Stalkers, a literal couple of Stalkers at home, and he starts his blink. Now we do have Cloak Banshee on the way here, and we're most likely going to be seeing a Robo go down soon for Zest as well. As that usually, eventually you're going to need a Robo. I think his Robo is already quite late, honestly. I wouldn't have minded seeing that go down a little bit faster. But yeah, he gets the robotics facility after a couple of extra warp hits. And now, even though the early game was very weird, through pressure, he managed to get into a normal situation where one could argue is even slightly ahead, right? He has a bunch of Stalkers on the map, his blink is on the way, he has good eco. His opponent only just now landed his natural. So sure, he looks down in income, but that's just because of the mules. And I think in general, it had been looking good so far for Zest income-wise. Like he is a healthy supply, basically. Now, here he does something which he doesn't do an awful lot, and that's taking 4 gases before a 3rd base. Now, this is interesting to note for both Terrans and Prolosses. Whenever you see 4 gases from Blink, this usually indicates a robotics bay. Because you simply don't need 4 gases if you want to go into charge and then Templar afterwards. So, we see battery over here. No battery in the main, battery in the natural. Means that any kind of Banshee arrest should be kind of easily defended by just pulling the workers towards the battery. And only a single observer will be required to deal with any kind of Banshee in the main base. So 4 workers go down. This is an okay trade for both. Both will be okay with that, right? Zest going Robo Bay. We'll start getting Colossi. We see him going up to 4 gates as well. He wants a decent gateway count. After he kills the first Banshee, he decides to build a battery at home. And then to move across the map as to meet any kind of push out from special, which I kind of like, honestly. He can always warp in case the Banshee does come back. Perhaps the only point of critique would be the lack of a 3rd base for quite some time, right? There's no real 3rd base for a long time. I think he probably could have built that a bit faster, been in a better economical position. And as Zest has now spotted tanks, I think he spotted 2 or 3 tanks maybe even. The most natural response would be to go into charge, even though he has Colossi already. Still get charge in case of tanks, get Thermal Lance, Colossi, and you can do a lot with that against tanks. Most people always say, well, you just need charge lots Immortals, but even with Colossi you can get pretty far against tanks. Because the thing with tanks is that a lot of the time when Terrans build tanks, they're kind of gas heavy, right? And a lot of things that Terrans do, they require gas. You got your medevacs, you get your tanks now, your upgrades, stuff like that. You see the gas is already pretty low, and that means that the marine count most of the time is going to be a bit higher than it is if this was going to be a no tank army. So we see 18 marines, which means that Colossi, when they're targeting well, are going to do very well against these marines. So even if Colossi is probably not the ideal unit to have, it's still a fine unit to have, and you can definitely get away with it. Now, I don't like that this observer was so late, but Zest is going to send it across the map eventually. He doesn't really have vision of this area in front until that observer arrives, so that means... Oh. That is a frustrating moment. There for special. As he doesn't get it. Alright, he waits for combat shield to move out, and then I'd love to see with this army to even see Zest just try and defend some chokes earlier on in the maps, right? This army of Special, when you look at it, is an army that is really, really powerful when in position and when sieged. Majority of the damage is gonna come from these tanks, which means the moment you can force him to siege, because he's afraid to take a fight without being sieged, that's gonna delay the push, it's gonna get you closer to your charger, +1, that kind of stuff, which is very, very important here. Because once they're sieged, I mean, this army is, even though it mainly consists of Marines and a couple of tanks, it's very dangerous. And here, Zest does something that I find, this is a move that people, when they think of, all right, how, like I lost to a tank push again, how do I win against tank push? This is a move people don't think of very much, but this is a move that is really common against both early game tank pushes from a 1-1-1 or tank pushes from something like this, where you have your Marines and your Marauders and your tanks and their stim and combat shields, like more like of a 3-rex variation. So the move you do is you kite back to your base, and then as you're about to arrive back at your base with your Stalkers, join them up with your main army, whether that consists of charge slots or Colossi is irrelevant, you move away and you go around, and basically you're shutting off all reinforcements. And that's a big thing. So right now, what Special needs to do, he needs to rally into his natural, which makes this push a lot weaker. The moment there is no reinforcement here, that basically means the longer you can stall, whether that's with a force field on the ramp or just staying in a good position with a nuclear battery or battery overcharge, however you want to call it, that's going to help your case as long as you can stop the reinforcements from joining. And then another beautiful thing with this is that you're kind of naturally setting up a flank, even though it's only with Stalkers, and it makes you realize that once again these flanks are very important. Now this was a bad engagement by Zest. I think he got a little too over-eager there, but you see right now that a lot of the army here for Special, this is what, 20 supply already that is just standing at home, and walking across the map, if you don't see the Stalkers join up with the main army, can be kind of scary, honestly. And the goal for the Protoss here is to either fight before these reinforcements join up, or to just stop the reinforcements from joining up altogether. So Zest not being in position to catch these reinforcements, I'm not a big fan of, but I think the initial move there was a very good one. So you see right now that these Stalkers have been spotted once again by Special. He's just going to start rallying everything across the map. And that's what I was talking about earlier. So what Zest is going to do now is he's going to just be very, very patient with his army. And he's just going to be like, okay, I'm just going to get a perfect position. I'm going to force you to keep moving forward and forward with your tank. Then eventually I'm just going to kind of collapse onto you from a very wide angle, where my Colossi will be focusing on your Marines, and then the rest of my army will take down your tanks eventually. Even blinks forward here. And you see he stalled a lot of time for him to get +1, to get charge, and then he just kind of jumps on him. And this is one of those things that is very difficult to do, because people are always afraid of tank positions. They're like, alright, this army is just going to keep growing, and he's in position already, I need to break it as soon as possible. But a lot of the time the best thing to do is either to not break it at all, and cut off reinforcements, or to wait until you get some key upgrades like charge, or until you have like 2 Archons in your army, or maybe 2 extra Immortals pushing in, and then in combination with your battery overcharge, a lot of the time you can get a good amount done with an army, even if there is 4 or 5 tanks. Liberators usually is a slightly different story, as Liberators really, they grow kind of exponentially in power, so try to break that as fast as possible, I'd say. But with tanks, usually you can still kind of scale well, as long as you set up a good engagement, and that's very important. So Zest clears that army, and the rest of the game he's just going to continue. He's just going to continue basically what he does best, right? He starts blinking around. He has these Stalkers on the map, like trying to control the pace of the game. Very active always with Blink Stalkers. He has decent vision here up to the top. It's not brilliant, like there's some dark spots in here, there's dark spots down here, but his army is positioned here, so he's fine with not having too much vision on the bottom side for now, until he gets these observers kind of spread out. If you compare the vision between Special and Zest, you see that Special has 0 vision, and that Zest kind of has a lot of vision, even though it's not perfect, right? So he can be very aggressive with these stalkers and feel kind of at home. And every move for special is basically a gamble. Like, hey, is there going to be an army waiting for me here? So you see he's scanning, he's looking for observers, he's trying to deny Zest vision, but also just trying to make sure that he's not going to die when he walks up a ramp. That's kind of important as well, not dying. So yeah, let's just move this game forward. And the general style that Zest likes to play is just Charge Lot Archon Colossi or Charge Lot Archon Storm. Then he just kind of engages into areas, usually with good engagement. Sometimes two Colossi just walk to the side. Then you have to GG out. But you can imagine how this game would have been if the two Colossi actually were with the army, or if he just continues in this way, right? Starts adding disruptors, fort base. So, like I said, the outcome of games usually isn't that interesting to look at if you're trying to figure things out in the early to mid game or even in the late game. Like, it can be completely viable to copy this style, even though he loses this game because of, some major mistakes. So that's just a look at how he likes to play the early game into a Colossus style. Now let's get into our second replay. I'll see you guys there. Between Special and Zest, and I think this game is just going to be a gas first. So for everyone not aware, there's if we're thinking of openers from Terran against Protoss, we're thinking in two main openers, if we don't count any proxy racks, and that's gas first and barracks first. Especially at the highest level, this is a very important distinction. Now, what does gas first do? It allows the Terran to get faster factory tech, and they sacrifice some economy and some safety for it. And also they get a later Reaper. Now, the telltale signs of this usually is delayed barracks, faster gas mining. So Zest comes in here, he sees the timing of the barracks, he's like, hey, that's weird, that's not normal. Barracks, when barracks first, should finish around 127. This barracks is going to finish 131. That's 4 seconds late. Now, for a lot of you guys, that's going to be completely irrelevant, but for some of you, it might be like, hey, I didn't know that. That's interesting. So you can see that the factory now is going to be faster by a fair amount. There's not going to be a second unit before reactor. With barracks first, you're always going to be seeing Reaper Marine reactor, or if they go Marine first. That's another thing, by the way. If you see a barracks first, so barracks gas, and then the Terran player goes into a Marine from barracks gas, it basically has the same timings as a gas first, but they lose the scouting ability because they don't get a fast Reaper, and they don't have anything to force you on your side of the map, which the Reaper usually does. So just some interesting things. Now, this is why sometimes it feels like your build is very good against whatever the Terran does, and other times all your units seem to just be 15 seconds too late. And that's usually either because of, they're playing gas first and they just have a faster factory. You're not going crazy or start to play worse. Now, here we see Zest actually play a very standard build order, which is beautiful to copy. I have made a guide on this before, but just for the people who haven't seen it before, let's just go over it real slow, okay? Or well, real slow. 2 times speed. Let's do it. So you have Twilight Council after the Adept, into Stalker, and second gateway. Now the second gateway is important that it gets built before the Cybercore timing is 55 out of 100 or 54 out of 100. So the moment your warp gate finishes, you can immediately warp in. You get a third Stalker as well, or a third gateway unit, which is a second Stalker, and then this is actually kind of important. You wall with the robotics facility in the wall. Now, the reason why this is important is really just for one reason, and that reason is Hellions. Now, if you're playing against someone who has a Reaper and 2 Hellions, you might think, well, I have a wall here. This looks absolutely great, right? How is he gonna come through? He can't. Wrong. You were wrong if you thought that. Idiot. The reason why it's wrong is because the Reaper has a trick. Look at this. Boop. Grenade. Bounce out of the way. Adios, bouncer. And just like that, they're in your club. And you thought your probes were safe, but no. Look at these guys. They came in your club. They're here to roofie people. Or do whatever people do that try to run by bouncers. Anyway, they run by. And they get some damage done. It's not ideal. Now, you're wondering already, Harstem. This looks impossible to beat. Zest can't even do it. Do you have a trick for us? Great question. The answer is yes. Now, imagine we know our opponent is playing Hellions. What we can do is we can wall with the robo, like our friend Zest did here. We move our Stalker and Adept slightly to the front, and we leave a probe on patrol or hold position here. So if we have a Stalker here and an Adept here, first it does two things. First of all, it might just scare him off, right? Special sees an Adept and a Stalker here. He can do two things. He can be like, all right, that's scary. He goes back home. Or he can be like, okay, well, it means there's nothing in the wall. And he starts running in, giving us free damage on his units. Then when he gets close, we build a battery or a gateway or a pylon or a cybercore or a forge. Or if you have a lot of space and nexus, you can wall with a star. Just do it with a pylon, okay? Just build a pylon here temporarily, which then, you know, a grenade doesn't work on that. Then he bumps into that. You do a lot of damage to his units, maybe even kill a Reaper, maybe even kill an Hellion. Then when he runs away again, you can cancel it. Smart. See, Zest didn't think of that yet, but I sometimes do some thinking by myself, and that's a little trick you can use. Now, of course, the damage here isn't awful yet, but if you can make the decision between losing 4 workers and not losing 4 workers, you'd be an idiot to go for losing 4 workers. So don't do that. Just build a pylon, alright? Now, there's one important thing here that Zest does, is that his warp-in, so his first 3 units are Adept, Stalker, Stalker, and then his first warp-in is a Stalker and a Sentry. Now, you might be wondering, hey Kevin, why a Sentry and a Stalker? Sentry is garbage, this unit does nothing. Wrong. This unit has 2 spells, which are essential for survival for the Protoss. And you're thinking, the Force Field and the Guardian Shield. Incorrect. It's the Guardian Shield and the Hallucination. And mainly the Hallucination here. Because when you play a Blink build order... Oh, am I joking? Ding dong. When you play a Blink build order... let me get that. Alright, where was I in my story? Okay, so what you do is... you use the Hallucination to scout. But you're like, well... don't we have the observers to scout, you idiot? That's what you built a robo for. No, wrong. Observers are for detection. When you play against a gas first or a barracks first, marine first, your observers don't have time to get across the map and then see what he's doing and then be in time with observers for a Banshee. So we see the timing for the Banshee here is going to be like 450-ish, 460. Wait, 460? That's 5 minutes. 5 minutes. So the Banshee comes soon. You don't have time for these observers to get across the map. So what you do is you scout with the Hallucination and you put the observers either in positions to spot for paths of your opponent's units or to be in position for Banshees. 460, he said. Oh my god. An actual idiot. So what Zest does is he'll get his observers in position. He scouts with his Hallucination and he sees a 1-1-1 here. Now, if you see this kind of setup, I'd suggest getting a blind battery at the 3rd base. For any kind of level. This is not just like, well, if you're bronze, that would be a great... No, this is a good plan if you're any level. From high Grandmaster to low Grandmaster to medium Grandmaster to... Is there other levels? Platinum or something, I don't know. Just everywhere, it's just good. Especially since we have battery overcharge now. Just use that ability, you'll be absolutely fine. So, what Zest ends up doing is he has Stalkers in position. But the problem here, so there's 2 things that Zest does wrong here. Let's criticize the best player. Okay, so first of all, he has too many Stalkers at home. That's one. That's an issue because it means he can't have units on the map to delay any kind of incoming push. Second of all, he didn't have a warning signal here, which is one of the most important things, to have a unit or something that can know when your opponent moves out and thus trigger you to start moving out on the map with your Stalkers, which Zest didn't do. Right now, Zest is completely unaware of where his opponent's army is and thus he can't do moves like I explained last game. Like he can't kite this back. If you have 4 Stalkers, you can one-shot a Marine. Now, if there's only, 10 Marines in this army, you can kill 5. You just killed 50% of all the Marines. It's quick math. That's good. These Marines do quite some damage. Another thing that's good is, after you kill those 4 Marines, you do the move that I talked about earlier. So you kite back till here. You move around, whoop, to the speed zone. And all of a sudden, this army is cut off from reinforcements. These 2 Marines will never reach their destination. Billy and Joel, look at them. Billy, great time. But they're only having a great time because Zest forgot to send his stalkers here. You see? Billy Joel never would have written Piano Man together if there were 4 stalkers here. But now they write Piano Man and they become a famous musician after the war. Now there's a move here that Zest, realizing all of his mistakes, all of this is going through his head right now. He's like, oh my god, I'm an idiot. I forgot to build a battery. It didn't kite back his army. How am I gonna win? Look, he even tries to. Billy got 1 hit. He's like, oh, I'm an idiot. Very rough. So what he does is he accepts this as a loss. He's like, okay, I'm an idiot. I'm gonna pay the idiot tax, which is a tax that usually isn't, issued by governments. But in StarCraft we have such thing. It's the idiot tax. Basically, you accept that you made mistakes, and then instead of losing the game because of those mistakes, you just accept the cost for it, which in this case is going to be a nexus. So what Zest does is brilliant. He just gives up the nexus. He's like, okay, I can't win this fight. There's 2 tanks, there's going to be 2 bunkers, like 17 marines and 2 banshees. He does some quick math. He's like, all right, I have 11 stalkers. What's going to happen if I blink in here is I'm going to lose 11 stalkers and I'm going to kill 3 marines. And then I'm going to lose the game afterwards. So what he does instead is absolutely brilliant. And especially for everyone here that's watching, just put this in your mind that whenever you make a mistake, or whenever you see a fight that you can't win, don't take it. Now this is kind of a revolutionary thought here. But the whole idea behind this thought is that it's better to be very far behind than to lose the game, which is why base trades are such a popular tool when it comes to coming back in games. When you see that you can't win a game with your army, that you can't fight this army, which in this case Zest can't, then you can go like, hey, wait a second, if I can't fight this army, maybe I shouldn't do it. Revolutionary thought here. Zest knows this. He's like, okay, I can't fight this. What I do instead is I take this loss, I expand over here, and now I'm gonna make sure that Lady Gaga doesn't join with this army, because then all of a sudden we have a lot of musical talent in this group, and that's not good, because the power of music trumps. Okay, I'm done. Yeah, so he just wants to make sure that no reinforcements join up with this army anymore, and he'll play from a position where he's behind. Now, you could say, well, that's terrible, he's never gonna win this game. That's true, but he also is never gonna win the game by jumping into 2 tanks and 17 marines and 2 bunkers and two banshees, and it's rough. Like, they'll be singing Piano Man at your funeral. It's not what you want. So instead, Zest is like, okay, that's a hit to my life, a hit to my economy. But what we're gonna do is we're just gonna continue as normal. So he gets a couple of gateways, gets his prism, gets his charge slots, blah 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 blah. We have an observer over here. This Banshee's doing way too much damage. And now that all this time, you see, these boys have been basically cutting off the reinforcement. He has an observer here as well. Now all of a sudden, Zest can be like, hey, wait, the moment he moves back, perhaps I can kill this army. Perhaps. Because maybe his entire army is out of position because there were 15 stalkers dealing with a single Banshee. And then this army gets to run away. But luckily, I think, I actually can't remember if Zest gets this army. If he doesn't get this army, that would be pretty sad. I'm not gonna lie. Okay, so he gets part of the army before it returns home. Stim isn't done yet, combat shield isn't done. And all of a sudden Zest here has a fight that might actually be winnable. And that's just because he waited his opportunity. He realized, okay, I just need to wait this out. I need to chill till he wants to go back home. And then perhaps I can pounce on this opportunity. Stim combat not done yet. And he absolutely hits a perfect timing here. Where, also because he skipped upgrades altogether. From a really crap situation, all of a sudden, you have a really good situation. Well, really good. Yeah, he just kills the 3rd base. He's equal in workers. Like, this is a really good situation. We have another Banshee with like 28 kills. So special is very good with Banshee. It's actually ridiculous. And then from here, the game is, well, you can call it semi-even or good for Zest. And he just goes back into the things that he likes doing the most. Single forge, most of the time armor upgrades, storm. You put these stormers in a prism. Okay. Attack upgrades, you do use Zest, just to make me look like a clown. Very high stalker count. Okay, if he plays high stalker count, usually he does get +1. High immortal count. And then all he needs to do is just figure out is Special getting a third base, or is it going to be an SCV pool? And if you don't see a third base, most likely it's going to be an SCV pool. And indeed, we see 3 ghosts on the way. SCV pool. And then Zest has Storm ready. And let's pretend that I actually think Zest wins this game as well. So we'll actually have a winning game too here. That's nice. And this is of course a very powerful trick, because Templars can get EMP'd when they're in a prison. It's a quick trick you guys can copy as well if you're very good. Just practice this in like a unit test map or something like that. Just put a couple of Templars in the prison, then drop them and storm Marines. Always go for the Marines, of course, the lowest life, or storm SCVs, or I don't know, storm units with low HP basically. Don't go on Marauders. Marauders are very fat. Not a lot of them fit into a storm, so they're not ideal for storming. Yeah, and then the way that he sets up the engagement, once again, very patient, knowing that if very patient. As long as he keeps this ramp, he's gonna be completely fine. Dum-bi-dum-bi-dum. Puts a couple of force fields. His supply is growing. His opponent's supply is not growing. And then he just waits until he has a perfect fight. He takes it. And he wins the game with, honestly, relative ease. Like, he barely even micros this. GG gets called, he wins. So that was game number 2. Let's head into game number 3, where we're gonna have a look at how to deal with mech at the highest level of StarCraft 2. Wow. Alright, I pressed the record button. We're ready. Game number 3 between these guys. It was a best of 3 as well, by the way. Fantastic best of 3. If you haven't seen it yet, well, now you have. So you don't need to do that anymore either. There's one thing that I don't understand about Zest. Mishregi Yasal. Mishregi means I'm trash, I think. That's not what I don't understand about Zest though, is the way that he builds his buildings makes absolutely negative sense. And we saw in that first game that the lack of a wall really cost him 1 or 2 probes there. And here once again, I just don't understand it. It does give him a lot of space to build though. Perhaps a bigger fan of the SimCity series than of the StarCraft 2 IP. Could be an explanation for something. You money umso. Nice. You money umso. Umso means very many. So he just said you're very rich basically. That's very kind of Zest. But maybe he meant rich in experience, not rich in money. I don't think there's any StarCraft players that have money. We all spend it. It's in our brains. We look at our bank account and man, it's terrible macro. There we go, 3 Armani t-shirts. Another Gucci bag. That's the life, man, as a StarCraft player. That's probably just a rich in experience, because yeah, we tend to spend it. Now, we have something interesting here. We have a full wall. Many people struggle with this, like, well, there's a full wall. I can't scout anything. No, but what you can do is you can gather information from your opponent. Now, how do you do that? The first info we get is that there's a barracks at home, which means ding, ding, ding. There's not a barracks on our side of the map. Well, there could be. Let me rephrase that. The first barracks isn't on our side of the map. It could be possible there's a second barracks on our side of the map. But if we see a Reaper, the likelihood of that becomes very, very little. So it might be wise, note might, to lose or to check with our first probe what comes out of this barracks. Is it a Reaper? Is it a Marine? If it's a Marine, perhaps a faster battery is worth it. I think it's slightly risky that we're not seeing a fast battery, because Proxy Marauder is a real deal breaker. Now, what we see here from Zest is an inclination to scouting. He wants to know what's going on. And he's gonna find out what's going on because he scouts the entirety of his own map. So it's like, okay, the first barracks is at home. Let's see if there's a structure on my side of the map. And if there is, he'll probably get a battery. And if there isn't, then he won't. Maybe he'll still get one, but slightly later, after the second gateway. Because the battery will delay the second gateway. That's the only thing it does delay. You can have continuous worker production, continuous unit production. You just can't get a second gateway fast. So here we see the second gateway going down, and we see a Twilight. So we see, even though there is a weird opener, we see Zest not really caring and just going straight into his Twilight, into his much beloved Blink. We see 3 units coming out, double Reaper, single Hellion. No wall though, which I don't understand. But if Zest does it, we should just copy it, guys. No questions asked. No, okay, don't copy this wall. I think walling is actually better. He loses 3 workers here, which is kind of a lot to just a Hellion and 2 Reapers. His worker count is looking fine though. It's like 30 against 26. Could be better, could be worse. Perhaps could spend a little more Chrono Boost on probes, but instead he goes for a lot of Chrono Boost on Blink. I think he Chronos it 3 times usually, if I recall correctly. Now the reason he does that is because he always wants to kill stuff like Metavacs and all that. So he sees a move out here. He's very, very aggressive after that early game. He's like, okay, I can be on the other side of the map. Has a pylon once again, similar to that game 1 that we watched, where he just builds a random pylon. Not the biggest of fans of it, but oh well, what can you do, eh? He's better than me in PvT, so I'm just gonna accept it for what it is. Now, walks back home. Liberty gets a forge, sentry out, and now there's something interesting that you can do, right? There's 2 schools of thought here. We have the forge can either go into a +1 attack, or it can go into a +1 armor. And based on what we see there, we're gonna guess the style. Let's have a look at that in the slow motion. Okay, so with this amount of stalkers that he had, you can definitely 2-shot a medevac. But instead what happens is he 1-shot or almost 1-shots one of his stalkers. And he still kills the medevac obviously, but this could have been a little bit better for him. Let's just put it like that, alright? So he gets a +1 attack. Now, the thing with +1 attack is that most of the time what you're gonna do is you're gonna be focusing on heavy stalker counts, more immortals, and perhaps counter attacks with zealots. Like, you don't want elongated fights with charge. You don't want these fights where you're chasing him across the map, because your units won't be able to take a lot of damage. Basically, you're gonna be more of a technical army with stalkers, sentries, immortals, perhaps a prism for counter attacks. Charge and +1 will do a lot of damage there, but your units will be able to stay alive a little less long. So we're gonna see that. Now Sess is gonna be very happy with his choice here for getting a +1, because he now probably realizes it's mech. Now you could say, how does he know it's mech? Well, there's 2 tells, which he only needs 1 of the 2, but if you're bad at the game or you're not great, you might need 2 tells. For example, I usually need 3 tells. Sadly, there's only 2, so I never quite realize when it's mech. Now, timing of the 2nd and 3rd barracks is very late. There's none yet, so that's very late. At 6 minutes, that could be a little bit, you know, that's discomforting. Second of all, 3rd and 4th gas before barracks is a 100% tell that it is indeed going to be mech. So, yeah, basically that. Those really are just the 2 tells. There's no third. Well, the 3rd tell would be that you see factories, but that's a very obvious one. If you see factories and no extra barracks, then yes, it's mech. If you hadn't figured that out, though, I feel like it might just be time to uninstall. If you don't have StarCraft, by the way, did you guys know that StarCraft is free to play? You could start playing yourself instead of just watching my videos. Nice. That would be nice. Okay, so against mech. Now, this is interesting. Everyone struggles against mech. I think the most emails I always get are about mech and how to get lips the size of mine. I don't know that. You'd have to ask my parents. But mech, I can help you with. Mech is one of those compositions which isn't just a composition where you go, oh, against mech, you just build immortals. People will say this. Someone asked in the comments, hey, how do you beat mech? And a guy in the comments goes, immortals are very good against mech. Technically correct, but in a lot of situations, it's also gonna absolutely suck to just build immortals. For example, in theory, Hellion Cyclone, Banshee is also mech. If you build mass immortal against Hellion Cyclone, Banshee, you're gonna get blasted so hard, you'll remember that for the rest of your life. You're gonna be in the old people's home at 80, and it's like, Daddy, tell me a story back in the day. Or Granddad, tell me a story back in the day. Like, oh, on Ice and Chrome LE, back in 2020, I got absolutely blasted by Hellion Cyclone Banshee, and all I did was build pure immortal, son. Grandson. Great-grandson. Whatever you are. Can't remember your name, Billy. Bruce? Another terrible story. What's the point I was trying to make? Different compositions for different types of mech. So let's make a clear distinction here. This is tank Hellion Banshee mech. What do we want against this? Archons, Immortals, Charge Lots. That's fine. What else could we get? There's loads of compositions that could work, actually. I think Zest is going to show me something that I hadn't even considered as a composition yet, but is. He's going to go Stalker, Charge Lot, Carrier, Templar in Prism, which Stalker, Templar is good against Cyclone-based mech. So whenever you see Cyclones being added, you either want Storm, Disruptor, or Colossi. You want some type of AoE with longer range, something that can allow you to disengage with units that are being locked onto. If you are playing against pure tank, Hellion, whatever mech, it's not that necessary to have longer range because the tanks are the longest range and most of the time you're either going to be fighting in siege positions or, well, no, you're just going to be fighting in siege positions. I mean, if they fight on siege, you'll win. So, seeing this against someone that opened with many siege tank is very weird. Seeing this against Hellion Cyclone would make a lot more sense. Against Banshees, now there's a couple of things you can do. I like Observer Speed a lot against Banshees. A lot of the time the Banshees will get the Banshee Speed. Hyperfly the Rotor Motor or something like that. And then getting a single Phoenix is a good way to deal with that as well. But instead what we see Zest do is he kind of gets this Stalker Archon army, which I thought was absolutely cute. Templars in a Prism. He expands very quickly, high probe count, and very quickly into carriers. This is extremely fast carrier production. Now, the reason why he wants this army for that is because if you go a straight up fighting army like your Charge Lot Immortal Archon, you're probably gonna die. But this is a very technical army where you can defend or at least force your opponent to move out very slowly. So you see, the difference right now in supply is very much in favor of Special, but it's going to be difficult for Special to move out because there's such a mobile army on the map that's good at, it's very adept at base trading, it is very good at delaying move out, and any kind of clumped units get absolutely stormed to death. So if Zest retains map control, basically, he's going to be in a fantastic spot. That's what I want to say. And then he transitions into carriers off the back of this, right? He gets a couple of Charge Lot, but not too many. And this is really, this Storm army, or this Storm Prism is really the backbone of this entire style. So it's an interesting style that I hadn't seen really before. And if I had seen it before, it probably is in one of the replays that you guys sent. The perfect way to deal with mech, but it didn't work. Can you elaborate on it? And then I reply back, this style sucks. Then you unsubscribe to my YouTube and start sending packages with poop to my house, which that hasn't happened yet. And this is not a suggestion for anyone to start doing that either. So please don't do that. I think I might just cut out this part. Ursadon. No matter what style you play against, you should always kill the Ursadon. It's a legendary Pokemon. And by killing it, you could perhaps unlock more Pokemon in future maps. It might drop a rare item as well. Like a rare candy or TM57, which is Mud Slap. That's not true. I made it up. So yeah, into carriers. +3 attack. Interesting style, really. Just imagine being such a baller that you disable one of the Templar and then get feedback by the other. I think that's just cool, honestly. So at this point, Zest is, I don't want to say throwing away units for fun, but he kind of is, because he wants to free up some supply for his carriers while doing damage to this army. So this army is moving out, and Special is like, man, these trades are going great. I wonder why Zest is such an idiot. But no, Zest is not an idiot. Neither is the Terran, but Zest is winning technically, because he's throwing away units that can be easily replaced by carriers if you have 4 Stargates. So it's a very cool style where he kind of plays around the ability to quickly move around the map and to do base trades and then delay with units like I guess he has 2 disruptors as well, but mainly with Templar. And now we see a base trade, and all of a sudden special, oh crap, I guess I have to run back now. This is a very small army, it's very mobile, which is fun. It's fun to play. And then eventually special is like, alright, I think I've managed to push you back here. I killed a bunch of your crap. Let's move across the map. And the moment that happens, all of a sudden there's, what? It's gonna be like 4 or 5 carriers with +2 most likely done. There's disruptors out. There's still a prism that's really fast with a Templar inside. So yeah, practically that. And then once again, he actually just started base trading. And once again, special was pulled back out of position with this very heavy mech army. So this is really just a very high mobility army. And all of a sudden, with that high eco style behind it, so fast tech, high eco, high mobility army, has a lot of bank. He starts trading, doesn't trade perfectly, but trades well enough. Then he has like what, 10, 15, 12 gates behind it. He just starts warping in more stuff. Good luck, buddy. I still have carriers as well. You don't have enough Tors. Oh, there's Tors here. That's nice. I have Stalkers. Can warp in like 20 more Stalkers. Bam. Wins the game just like that. Very fun style to play against mech. Is it the easiest to play? Probably not. Are you guys gonna die a lot while trying it? Yeah, probably as well. Am I gonna play it? Yeah, probably. But yeah, it's just something fun that you can do. It's just the concepts behind it that are interesting to explore, I think. You don't even need to play this exact style, but just the thought of very fast tech, very high eco, and high mobility. It sounds like a recipe for dying, but you know, Zest, just by being very active on the map, keeping that map control, kind of tricking his opponent into constantly chasing small armies. Basically what you're doing, like he's specials chasing the dragon, you know? Like chasing the dragon of, ooh, killing the small army. Then eventually Mama Dragon shows up. And bang, complete army gets wiped out. Mama Dragon is these carriers and 38 Stalkers. Fantastic. Nice. I managed to press record on everything. I'm perfect. And with that, we're gonna end episode 2 of the Harstem. If you did enjoy that, don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel. I also have a Patreon, which you can pay me money. I do nothing for it. Twitter, Twitch, down below, Instagram. Very important. High quality pictures every single week. Bye bye. Love you all.